destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of IP for Disney, but she also has destroyed her career and the careers of anybody who worked on the movie.
In this video, we're going to delve deep into what this new casting means for Disney, for Margot Robbie's career, and for the legacy of Snow White as an iconic character. We'll also explore how Disney is positioning itself to avoid the pitfalls of its last remake where it all went wrong, how they plan on making it right this time, and why Margot Robbie might be exactly who they need. Let's break down the details, the drama, and the potential redemption arc that Disney is hoping to write. Buckle up, because there is a lot to unpack. Before we talk about Margot Robbie's take on the legendary Disney princess, let's revisit The Last Attempt, which starred Rachel Zegler. That adaptation was meant to be a bold reimagining of Snow White, someone less focused on romance and more on self-determination. While these updates to the character's motivation might sound appealing on paper, the execution ended up being a lightning rod for criticism. Online backlash spread quickly as snippets from cast interviews circulated. Rachel Zegler's comments appeared to dismiss the original film's themes of love, kindness, and simple fairy tale charm, painting them as outdated. Many fans felt she was disrespectful not just to the 1937 animated classic, but also to the generational love that people hold for Snow White. That negativity spiraled, causing a significant PR headache for Disney. Ultimately, the adaptation flopped at the box office, costing the studio hundreds of millions of dollars and tarnishing the public perception of a character who once signified the very start of Disney's animated legacy.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White
that
is
not going to be saved by the
prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
So, what went wrong? For one, the marketing never really found its footing. The film was presented as a modern twist, but fans felt the changes were more cynical than celebratory. Critics lambasted the story for losing the fairy tale magic that made Snow White endearing in the first place. The dwarfs, a beloved element of the classic, were removed or minimized in ways that left audiences perplexed, some describing the movie as almost unrecognizable compared to the original. The final product landed with a thud, disappointed fans, dismal ticket sales, and a huge blow to Disney's carefully cultivated brand for live-action remakes.
EV Magazine wrote on X, when you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
Under normal circumstances, you might expect Disney to shelve this concept for years after a fiasco like that. But the announcement that Margot Robbie would step into the role of Snow White suggests that the studio felt the pivot was not just wise, but urgent. Despite the sting of the previous adaptation, Snow White remains one of Disney's crown jewels. She was, after all, the star of Walt Disney's very first feature-length animated film. In 1937, a film that changed cinematic history. Disney clearly isn't willing to let a single misfire tarnish Snow White's legacy permanently.
I could sort of feel the edges of truth everywhere. Young Rachel Zegler, I would say, probably is at the point where she's believing in the excitement of it all. And who can blame her? Who can blame her? Because it is very exciting to be told you're brilliant all day long if some point in the past you felt that you were worthless, as I did.
People might wonder, why not wait a few more years? Why rush back? The answer seems to be that Disney is in dire need of a success story in the live-action realm. After several lukewarm receptions, the Lion King remake got flack for being too close to the original. Mulan sparked controversies of its own. The House of Mouse is craving a definitive, unifying crowd pleaser. They can't afford to let Snow White's brand remain tainted, so they're turning to a bankable star, Margot Robbie.
I was looking at the chat, and some of you guys were like, we need a few less Snow White-like movies. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, all this woke stuff has to end.
Hollywood became so confused over identity politics that it turned on itself, because insiders say the industry never held any true values.
Margot Robbie is, without question, one of the hottest talents in Hollywood right now. She's proven her versatility across a spectrum of characters, from her Oscar-nominated performance in I, Tanya, to her comedic turn in The Wolf of Wall Street, to her portrayal of Sharon Tate in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and most recently in the enormous phenomenon that was Barbie. That movie shattered expectations, grossing well over $1 billion worldwide and cementing Robbie as a massive draw for audiences both young and old. Disney executives are undoubtedly aware of this. In an era of event cinema, star power can still make a difference, and Robbie has become a household name. She exudes both the classic Hollywood charm that a fairy tale princess demands, and a modern sense of independence that can resonate with today's viewers. By choosing her, Disney is signaling that they are not messing around. They want a safe, bet someone who can bring the gravitas and the warmth that Snow White needs, but also ensure people show up to the theater out of sheer curiosity.
And now the producer's son is coming out and blaming the whole thing on Rachel Zegler. He's not wrong. I mean, Rachel Zegler tanked this. There's a lot of other reasons they tanked it.
I mean, journalists weren't even invited to show up at the red carpet for the premiere because they were afraid she was going to say something that would hurt the movie even more.
Now, let's talk about the creative direction for this new live-action Snow White. Insiders report that Disney is framing it as a reconstruction rather than a sequel, or a continuation of the ill-fated previous attempt. That means we're essentially getting a do-over, an entirely fresh creative team, a new aesthetic, and a return to the foundational themes that made the 1937 original so iconic. What does that look like in practice? Word has it that Disney wants to highlight Snow White's kindness, her empathy for nature, and her gentle spirit. However, there will still be modern elements, slightly revised character motivations, more depth, and a carefully balanced sense of agency for Snow White. But crucially, it won't jettison the fairy tale qualities that fans cherish. That includes the musical aspect, which was stripped back in the last film. The dwarfs are also making a comeback, reportedly in a way that respects contemporary cultural sensitivities, while still retaining their core charm. Essentially, Disney is hoping to restore the simple magic that people felt was missing. Without ignoring 21st century storytelling possibilities, this approach, if handled well, could unite die-hard purists, casual Disney fans, and younger audiences who have grown up with a very different media landscape. If they succeed, it might very well be the formula that informs future live-action remakes too. You can't talk about Snow White without addressing the elephant in the room, the PR fiasco that erupted around the previous film. Rachel Zegler's comments and interviews were clipped, shared, and reshared online, igniting a firestorm of controversy. Fans felt alienated. Disney found itself on the defensive, trying to manage a narrative that spiraled out of control. By the time the film was actually released, the conversation had turned so negative that many moviegoers had already made up their minds against it. This time, Disney is being extremely careful. Gone are the days of openly bragging about how it's no longer 1937 or that the story is updated to reflect modern ideals. Instead, the messaging is more subtle. They're talking about emotional authenticity, timeless values, and bridging the gap between the old and the new. According to reports, executives have made it clear that they don't want to politicize this remake or lean into divisive social messaging that can overshadow the film itself.
Everything has to be that. You know, this is a, and also what is beautiful about the original Snow White too is the hand-drawn animation, right? Is the beauty of the cartoon. Yeah, and it's really there's an authenticity to it.
It's a lesson learned the hard way. Good storytelling must come first, especially when you're dealing with a property as classic and beloved as Snow White. If your marketing campaign becomes all about how you fixed or reinvented the original, fans might feel insulted, like you're dismissing what they cherished about the story in the first place. Disney isn't going to repeat that mistake. From what we've seen so far, the new approach is less about spotlighting how different it is and more about highlighting how it captures the essence of that classic magic. One of the loudest criticisms of the previous film was its enormous handling of the 7 dwarfs. In the 1937 animated version, the dwarfs are crucial to Snow White's journey, each embodying distinct personalities that make the story both charming and endearing. The last remake removed or radically reimagined them, leading to an outcry from fans who miss the whimsical fun and comedic relief these characters traditionally bring. For this new adaptation, Disney appears to have done an about-face. Sources say the dwarfs are back, but with more nuanced portrayals that nod to the cultural considerations of 2025 and beyond. The hope is to retain the dwarfs as comedic and lovable companions, while avoiding any unintentional stereotypes early. Leaks suggest the creative team might expand their backstories or interactions to give them depth, without losing the immediate charm that audiences expect. This, for many fans, is a relief. Snow White wouldn't feel like Snow White without those dwarfs. Their return is a sign that Disney is returning to the core blueprint that made this story resonate. For generations, a young princess on the run, finding unexpected friendship in the forest, and ultimately learning the power of love and goodness. We know Margot Robbie is confirmed as Snow White, but who's going to play the prince? Or the evil queen? These roles are massive in defining the tone of any Snow White adaptation. The evil queen is especially pivotal, as her dynamic with Snow White propels the entire story. She's often portrayed as a cunning, coldly beautiful figure consumed by jealousy, with an A-list star like Robbie in the lead. It's safe to assume Disney will want someone with equally strong star power or character actor chops for the queen. The same goes for the prince. After all, it's a fairy tale romance. Modern spins often flesh out his personality beyond the classic cartoon archetype, but you still need an actor who can capture the idealistic hope and bravery that drives that character.
And you know what? There's a reason for it to end right now, and it's in part because this stupid movie, Snow White, just totally bombed at the box office. They spent $270 million on this thing. They're not going to make their money back.
Industry rumors suggest a hush-hush search is already underway. we can expect a major casting announcement once negotiations are finalized. Disney learned from the last experience that if the supporting cast feels underdeveloped or overshadowed by controversy, the entire project suffers. For them, it's all about balancing the narrative. They don't want the prince or the evil queen to feel like side notes. They want them integral to the plot's heartbeat. Production is slated to begin in early 2026, with a theatrical release tentatively planned for the spring of 2028. That might sound like a long wait, but trust me, it's probably a wise decision. This extended timeline gives Disney the breathing room to craft a top-tier production. No rush marketing cycles, no last-minute script rewrites, and fewer panic decisions that often plague big-budget projects. It also aligns with Disney's new approach, a deliberate, reserved rollout that focuses on the emotional and artistic merits of the film, rather than quick sound bites. Expect to see carefully curated behind-the-scenes teases, concept art releases that highlight the film's aesthetic, and perhaps the early unveiling of a song or two. The key difference this time will be the emphasis on letting the story speak for itself, instead of turning the film into a statement piece about modern values. The plan is to underline why Snow White became such a beloved classic in the first place. Sources indicate that Margot Robbie is already immersing herself in the role. She's reportedly revisiting not just the 1937 film, but also older Grimm's fairy tales and various stage adaptations of Snow White. Robbie's goal is to find the delicate balance between classic innocence and a more nuanced inner strength. After all, Snow White is often described as gentle, kind, even naive at times, but there's also an element of fortitude beneath her surface sweetness, particularly when she's forced to flee her kingdom and rely on her wits and compassion to survive. Robbie has built her career on bringing multi-layered performances to the screen. Audiences saw that most notably in I, Tanya, where she portrayed a troubled figure with vulnerability and defiance. In Barbie, she managed to juggle whimsy, humor, and existential reflection, all while anchoring the story in sincerity. That skill set could serve her well here. Disney apparently wants a Snow White who can project quiet resilience, a woman whose kindness is a source of power rather than a weakness. If they pull that off, it could resonate with a wide audience. Young viewers see a role model in her optimism and compassion. Older viewers appreciate the layered portrayal that feels authentic, not forced or one-dimensional. That's the tightrope walk Disney must manage. Keep the essential fairy tale spirit, but bring it into alignment with contemporary storytelling that demands well-rounded characters.
I think it's really on her to go back and correct the record now, because she was spreading a lot of fear and disinformation.
Music has always been at the heart of Snow White's story. The original film introduced iconic songs like Hi-Ho and Someday My Prince Will Come, which have remained beloved for decades. The last remake took a more subdued approach, reducing the musical numbers and focusing on a kind of quasi-realism that didn't quite mesh with the property's whimsical roots. This new project is rumored to take a different route. Disney is reportedly in talks with a notable songwriting duo named still under wraps, plus some legacy Disney lyricists, to craft a soundtrack that marries timeless romance with a fresh sensibility. The idea is to include new songs that could become modern classics while weaving in reimagined versions of the original tunes. If they manage to capture that sense of enchantment of stepping into a storybook world with music that amplifies the emotional stakes, then they can reignite the same magical quality that made Disney musicals of yesteryear so timeless. Music can be the linchpin for a live-action remake like this. When done right, the songs become emotional anchors, a way for the audience to connect deeply with the characters' experiences. If you look at Disney's biggest successes in animation, from Beauty and the Beast to The Little Mermaid, the music isn't just background flavor, it's a key storytelling device. This time around, Disney wants to ensure that Snow White's signature innocence and hopefulness shine through in those musical moments, while also updating them to appeal to modern sensibilities. The stakes couldn't be higher for Disney's leadership. The last few years have seen a string of underwhelming box office results for several remakes and original franchises alike. Public trust in Disney's ability to handle beloved stories has been shaken. If this new Snow White bombs, it might be the final straw for many fans who are already skeptical of the entire live-action remake trend. That's why Disney is treating this project as a brand reset. In closed-door briefings, Disney's top executives have reportedly described it as a chance to prove that they still know how to deliver the core magic that defined the studio for generations. They're pouring resources into ensuring top-tier production values, high-profile talent like Margot Robbie, and a storyline that doesn't stray from the emotional cornerstones of the original. To that end, we can expect carefully managed press appearances, tie-in merchandise that highlights the classic motifs of Snow White, like the iconic red bow, the poison apple, and the woodland creatures, and an overall marketing campaign that evokes wonder rather than controversy. Disney knows it needs to recapture that feeling of stepping into a fairy tale world, and they're willing to spend the money and time to make it happen. In many ways, Snow White's journey in this upcoming film might mirror Disney's journey as a studio. Both have suffered setbacks and criticism. Both need to restore faith. Snow White as a character who was overshadowed by modern cynicism, and Disney as a studio that's trying to recapture its once flawless reputation for delivering joy and timeless stories. With Margot Robbie at the center, they're banking on star wattage and proven acting chops. With a new creative team, they're aiming to avoid the pitfalls of half-hearted updates and disrespectful reinterpretations. With the classic, music-heavy approach, they're seeking to remind everyone why Snow White was such a cultural phenomenon in the first place.
Do these orgies of CGI animation, recycling in a loveless format, the exact same, now every story is the same story about, again, a kick-ass female protagonist.
Will it work? Only time will tell. The critical question is whether audiences are ready to embrace a more traditional, hard-on-its-sleeve fairy tale in an era that can be quite cynical. Yet, if the massive box office success of Barbie taught US anything, it's that there's still a huge appetite for imaginative escapism, especially when paired with compelling storytelling. If Disney can tap into that same wellspring of nostalgia and wonder, while giving Snow White enough dimension to feel relevant, we might be looking at a real comeback. As we inch closer to the official start of production, there are a few key things to keep an eye on. Casting announcements the Prince and the Evil Queen can make or break this film. Keep a lookout for a list names or up-and-coming talent that could complement Robbie's star power. Teaser materials, expect Disney to drop carefully orchestrated teases like concept art or a snippet of a new song design to reassure fans that the Snow White is faithful to the spirit of the original. Public reception, online chatter will likely be intense. Disney will be trying to manage the narrative and avoid the divisive debates that plagued the last adaptation. Watch how the studio and Robbie handle interviews and social media. The tone, the biggest question is whether the final product finds that sweet spot, nostalgic enough for purists, but fresh enough to justify a new version. If they can do that, especially with a star like Margot Robbie, they could turn Snow White into a triumphant box office force. So there you have it, folks. The inside scoop on Disney's ambitious plan to rewrite Snow White's live-action destiny. Casting Margot Robbie is a bold and arguably brilliant move, considering her track record of delivering blockbuster hits and nuanced performances. The studio appears to be taking every measure to ensure this reimagining corrects the mistakes of the previous film, focusing on heartfelt storytelling, classic musical elements, and respect for what made the 1937 original a pioneering masterpiece in the first place. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Margot Robbie will make a convincing Snow White? Are you excited about a more faithful adaptation? Or have you had your fill of live-action remakes entirely? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe for more updates on all things Disney and film, and share your thoughts with our growing community. Until next time, this is your channel name, reminding you to never underestimate the magic of a good story. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.